Have you ever wondered what happens at that very moment, when the heart stops and the breath is cut off? Millions of people have argued about this for centuries, but few know that in the old archives of France, there allegedly were pages attributed to Allan Kardec himself, the man who was called the father of Spiritism, pages that were not included in any of his publications, and which, by a strange coincidence, remained hidden for almost 1.5 centuries. Why? What was on them that could not be made public? Was it an accident, or did someone make sure that the secret remained in the dark? Imagine night, candles, the howl of the wind outside the window, and in the center of the room, a man bent over sheets on which, as he believed, dictated by an invisible hand, were lines from that world where none of the living had yet returned from. These records were allegedly not intended for the general public. Kardec was warned that not every mind would be able to endure the truth, that too direct a knowledge of the afterlife could cause horror, shake the soul, and even lead to madness. And yet, several pages miraculously survived, passing from hand to hand like a cursed relic, which was both feared and cherished at the same time. You may ask, well, what was written there? But this is where the real intrigue lies. From the very first lines, like a cold wind, there runs a sense that the author truly heard voices not of people. In these fragments, it is said that after death we do not end up in heaven or hell the way it is commonly depicted in images. We are not met by a shining light, nor by a bottomless darkness, but by a space where time disappears and thoughts become matter. Kardec wrote, "There, every feeling becomes a form, every thought, a home or a prison." Think about that. A thought as a prison. What if everything you reflected on during your life awaits you there in the form of an inevitable reality, and it gets even scarier? He mentioned that souls are not free right away. They cling to the earth, to their habits, and cannot break away. They stand as if right next to us, but we cannot see them. And they see everything. And this is what torments them the most. To see their loved ones making mistakes, to see destinies collapsing, and to have no possibility of intervening. This is both punishment and purification at the same time. Imagine what it must be like to realize that death does not free from suffering, but on the contrary, makes it sharper. Allan wrote, "They feel our pain, our anger, our despair, and it drags them down like a stone on the neck." Does this mean that by grieving excessively, we actually torment the departed even more? This turns the entire idea of mourning upside down. But the most chilling thing is something else. Among the lines there is a hint about certain doors that do not open for everyone. He writes about beings he calls guardians of transition. Their task is to prevent those minds burdened with evil from entering higher spheres. These guardians are not angels in the usual sense, but neither are they demons. Their descriptions are frightening. They are faceless, but their gaze burns through the soul. They are silent, but their silence is louder than thousands of screams. What is this? Symbols? Allegories? Or are there truly forces beyond the veil that decide who is worthy to go further and who will remain wandering between worlds? And at that moment you begin to understand why the records were hidden. If people were to learn that they are not awaited by comforting peace, but by a space where every one of their feelings materializes and returns to them like a shadow, wouldn't that become the greatest panic in history? And it is exactly here that I want to ask you. Are you ready to hear the continuation? But let us go deeper. In these records there are strange mentions that souls gather into certain communities. Kardec writes that after death, each one does not become a lonely wanderer, but is drawn into circles of beings similar in spirit and intentions. There are no random meetings there. People who in life united through hatred or greed find themselves together again. And on the contrary, those who strove for knowledge or compassion find each other instantly, as if a magnet pulls their souls. Can you imagine what that means? The other world is not an abstract emptiness, but a reflection of our inner nature, brought to absolute honesty. You cannot hide behind a mask. You cannot embellish yourself with beautiful words. There is no deceit there. Everyone sees each other through and through. And Kardec wrote a chilling phrase: "There is no hell more terrible than to be among those whom you yourself have created with your thoughts." Think about it. If all your life a person sowed hatred, greed, envy, he will end up among the same as himself. And that will be his eternal circle. But in the texts there is also a hint that a way out is still possible. Souls who realize their own horror begin to reach for the light, and it is at that moment that those very guardians appear. Their task is not to punish, but to test. They seem to set barriers, checking the strength of intention. And if the soul gives up, if it says, "It is too heavy for me," it is sent back, not into life, but into wandering, into a tormenting state between worlds. And now imagine, Kardec claims that these souls still try to influence our world. They look for the weak. They look for those who are open, those who are ready to listen to the whisper. He wrote, "Some thoughts that you consider your own are not yours. It is the echo of foreign passions that did not manage to move further." Does that sound like a conspiracy theory? Maybe. But have you never felt that a thought comes suddenly, as if someone whispered it to you? In these records, there is a description of practices that supposedly allow one to close the doors to such influences. He speaks of simple things: a sincere prayer, a good deed, even a brief moment of gratitude. All of this changes the frequency of the soul, making it less accessible for foreign intrusion. But there is also the opposite. Kardec writes, "Every one of our acts of cruelty is an invitation. Every malicious thought is a door that we ourselves open." And here arises the main question: what if the world in which we live is already overflowing with these wandering souls? What if wars, hatred, crimes are not only the result of human nature, but also the pressure of those who could not move on? Does that not explain why evil repeats so often? The strangest thing is that Kardec hinted at encounters with these souls in dreams. He claimed that sleep is a little death, and that it is in sleep that we most often come into contact with the other world. Think, when you dream of a person who is no longer alive, could it be not just a play of imagination? Could it be a real meeting, but we wake up and forget, because the consciousness cannot endure the truth? He describes a vision in which souls stand in crowds at the border of the light. They seem to crave to enter, but their own burden does not allow them to step forward. They stretch out their hands, but their hands have no strength. They scream, but their screams are soundless. This picture is so eerie that it is hard to believe it was invented simply for effect. And then you begin to understand. Perhaps this is exactly why the manuscripts were not published. Humanity was not ready for the idea that we live in an ocean of invisible passions, that right next to us constantly wander souls who did not manage to move on. Tell me honestly, don't you feel a slight chill down your spine right now? And the deeper you read into these lines, the stronger the feeling that Kardec was not simply writing, he was warning. In one of the fragments he states, "The living are only a part of the great drama. The main action unfolds where they cannot see." Think about it. Our whole life may only be a shadow of events happening in another dimension, where destinies are already being decided, and we merely play out the assigned roles. He tells about how souls that did not withstand the trials and did not pass through the guardians sometimes receive one more chance. But this chance is not like the familiar rebirth as described in Eastern religions. He spoke of a return into the body without memory, but with a debt. This sounds like reincarnation, but with the condition that the debt will follow the person until it is repaid. Maybe this is why some people have the feeling that they carry the burden of someone else's pain, someone else's mistakes, although nothing like that has happened in their present life. And here is another detail that sends chills down the spine. Kardec claimed that sometimes these debts are unbearable, and a person leaves too early, from illness, accident, or a sudden blow of fate. But leaving early is not the end, only the transfer of the debt to the next attempt. Death does not free if the lesson is not learned, he wrote. Think about how this changes the view of tragedies around us. But then it becomes even more mysterious. In the records appears the theme of so-called interlocutors. These are not spirits of the dead, but special beings who seem to stand between worlds. They were not human, but they are not angels either. They come to those who are too close to the edge and speak short phrases that change everything. Have you ever heard words in your head that were not in your own voice, but seemed to save you? Maybe it was them. Kardec describes a meeting with such an interlocutor. He spoke little, but each word cut like a knife. You seek the truth where it does not exist. It is not in the darkness and not in the light. It is in the choice. And then I understood that we ourselves build the staircase by which we rise or fall. These words seem simple, but there is a depth in them that is hard to fully grasp. It is precisely such places in the records that create the feeling that Kardec held knowledge in his hands that was not meant for everyone. After all, if people were told that after death there is no end, but only an even more difficult trial, would the entire familiar order not collapse? Would the fear of an eternal school not become stronger than any faith in a reward? And now think of another thing. In one place he admits that he received warnings. He was told, "Not all pages should be written, not all words should be heard." But he could not stop. He felt that someone or something literally guided his hand. And these pages, precisely those, disappeared soon after his death. Coincidence? Or did someone truly make sure that the dangerous truth would not become public? And here arises the main question. If part of the records survived, then they were still meant for the future. Maybe precisely for our time. For centuries, people feared to look beyond the veil, and now when technology allows everything to be recorded, when society is ready for the boldest theories, suddenly these lines surface. Is that a coincidence? And again the disturbing thought returns. What if we live surrounded by an invisible world that literally influences our decisions? What if every one of our choices is pushed not only by ourselves, but also by the shadows of those who are stuck between lives? This is not mystical horror. It is a reality that changes the very essence of free will. And here, in the depth of the text, there slips a hint. The truth is not in what will be after death. The truth is in what we do with life, knowing about death. But if so, then why keep all of this secret? Why not give people the chance to understand and change their destiny? Or is that the danger, that knowing the truth people will begin to live not for life, but for fear? Do you already feel that we are closer and closer to the revelation? But the strongest part is still ahead. And then comes the moment when, in these lines, something appears that can be called a direct revelation. Kardec writes about the Hall of Silence. This is the place where the soul arrives after all the trials, but only if it has realized the most important truth. In this hall there is neither light nor darkness, no voices, only absolute silence. And it is in this silence that a person hears himself for the first time. There are no teachers, no guardians, no enemies. There is only you and your truth. And if you cannot withstand it, you return back. So it is written in one of the fragments. Imagine that horror, to stand face to face with the whole truth about yourself, without excuses, without the usual masks. Not everyone is capable of enduring this. Maybe that is why so many souls remain wandering, never reaching the Hall of Silence. But for those who pass, something greater opens up. And here the records become especially disturbing. Kardec writes, "They see worlds they have never known, and they understand. Life on earth is only the first step." He hints that our reality is just a small fragment of a vast staircase of worlds, and that death is only the transition into the next hall, and then into the next, and the next. There is no end, only eternal movement. And the most frightening thing, on each step the rules change. What here was considered virtue, there may become a trial. What here was considered sin, there becomes strength. Do you feel how the familiar picture collapses? We are used to believing in a final judgment, heaven or hell. But if Kardec is right, then everything only begins after what we call the end. And then he poses a question that sounds like a challenge. Are you ready for eternity? Because if all of this is true, then there is no such moment when one can say, that's it, I am finished, I am saved. Eternity is not a reward and not a punishment. It is a path that never ends. And here is the most chilling part. He describes that there are souls who are tired. They no longer want steps, trials, struggles, and they seek an exit, but there is no exit. He writes, their call becomes an echo in the void, and it is this echo that sometimes the living hear, a whisper of meaninglessness, of an end that does not exist. Think about it. Is this not why people sometimes suddenly feel an inexplicable despair, as if life has no meaning? Maybe these are not their own thoughts, but the echoes of those who are weary. And here arises the climax. At the end of one of the pages he left a phrase which he underlined several times: do not seek the end, seek meaning in every step. But what does this mean? Salvation or simply consolation? We will never know for certain, for the manuscripts end right here. The last line seems torn, unfinished. And this leaves the impression that the author wanted to say more, but did not manage, or was not allowed. And now the question to you: are you ready to live knowing that all of this may be true? That death is not liberation, but the beginning of a path where every thought becomes reality, every feeling turns into matter, and every one of your steps echoes into eternity. Maybe that is exactly why these records were hidden. Maybe humanity truly was not ready for such knowledge. But since you have listened up to this moment, it means the question will not let you go anymore. You will think about it today, tomorrow, in a week. Because the secret of the other world does not release. It pulls like a bottomless whirlpool, promising to reveal the truth, but only if you dare to look further. So the choice is yours. But remember, one night, when you close your eyes, you may hear that very whisper, and then you will understand this is not legend, not fantasy, not invention. This is only the first door. But the most astonishing thing is hidden at the end of these mysterious pages. After the descriptions of the Hall of Silence and the Staircase of Worlds, there suddenly appears a strange passage, as if inserted from another reality. Kardec writes, the truth is not given at once. It comes in layers, like fog dispersing over the sea. Each layer opens the next, but there is a limit that the living mind cannot cross. What is this limit? Perhaps it was precisely the reason why part of the manuscripts disappeared. For if there is a boundary that even spirits do not want us to cross, then it means there is something hidden there, capable of destroying the consciousness. Think about it. How many times in the history of humanity have ideas of forbidden knowledge appeared, of secrets that drive people mad? Maybe this is exactly such a case. Kardec mentioned that once he was shown a source. He does not describe it directly, only hints. It shone, but it was not light. It sounded, but it was not sound. Everything I knew about reality became insignificant next to it. And after this he repeated several times, I cannot describe, words betray. And then silence, as if he himself was frightened by what he had seen. But even more disturbing is that he spoke of the connection between this source and us, the living. He wrote, every person carries within themselves a spark of this source, but the closer one comes to it, the more pain one feels. This is like a paradox. What should give strength can at the same time destroy. Perhaps this is precisely what explains why the most sensitive souls, poets, mystics, prophets, often lived in suffering and left too soon. And here there appears a hint at the main point. We are not spectators in this story. We are participants. In every dream, in every choice, in every moment, we encounter this shadow of the other world. And the question is not whether we believe or not. The question is whether we are ready to admit that we are already on the path and that it has no end. The most chilling thing is that at the end of the manuscript remains a phrase, as if written for those who would read it decades later. The one who has learned will never be able to forget. He will be called, he will be tested, he will be guided. Admit it. Do you already have this feeling that after what you have heard there is no road back, and then everything falls into place? Maybe this is precisely why these records surfaced only now. Maybe it is exactly at this moment that humanity has approached the edge, where the knowledge of infinity will become a trial for everyone. We are used to the idea that death is a period, but what if it is only a comma? What if tomorrow night your dreams become a door, and your thoughts turn into walls that will surround you? And here is the last question that Kardec left. Are you ready to face what you yourself create every second? This is not a threat and not a prophecy. It is a mirror that he extended to us through time. So remember, everything you think, feel, do today, tomorrow will become your reality there. And if you decide to dismiss it, if you say, this is all fairy tales, then be ready one day to find out that the fairy tale is the most terrifying truth. And now, when the last line has broken off, we are left with only one thing: to wait. Because the secret beyond has not disappeared anywhere. It is near. It breathes with you. And one day, when you are left in complete silence, you will hear the whisper calling you by name.